Good morning. I spent a little bit of time this morning taking a look at some of the week two postings you had. Week two is a really interesting week. Week two is the week where we take a look at the individual who's coasting. On the surface, the subject was a very simple one. Someone, for whatever reason, is slowing down and it's showing in their performance. But as you discovered in your postings, as you started digging deeper and deeper, it involves a lot of things. It involves human resources and the law, what the law says, and what's right and legal against what you may feel is right morally. It involves employee assistance programs. It involves monitoring performance. It involves age discrimination. It involves potential disability issues. So I thought I'd take a minute, explain some of the concepts that I try to introduce in my postings in a little greater detail, and maybe help you understand the topic a little bit better. This is a class in human resources. My job here is to make sure you understand what's legal and not legal, not what's right or wrong. And although some of us may look at certain things and say, isn't it only right that? The reality is, when you make decisions in the workplace, you have to be mindful of what's legal and what's not legal. Now, let's take a look at some of the issues that were raised in the issue of coasting. The first has to do with what does it really mean to be an at-will employee? In the United States, unless you're covered by a contract, maybe you're covered by a labor agreement, maybe you have an independent contract with your employer, everybody is employed at will. That means your employer can terminate you at any time for a good reason. You miss too much time on the job. They can terminate you for no reason. They only cannot, and I repeat, cannot terminate you for a bad reason. And a bad reason in employment law is if they terminate you based on your membership in a protected class: age, gender, race, national origin, religion, creed, or membership in the United States Armed Forces. Physical or mental disability. I don't think I mentioned that one. They cannot terminate you based on one of those. So you're employed at will. All right. Now, when an employer starts dealing with you, the first thing they need to be mindful of is the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. And what does that law say? That law says that you cannot treat someone differently based upon their age once they hit 40. The reality is, below 40, you don't have that protection. But once you're 40 years old, you have that protection. And the law says you just cannot make a decision based on the individual's age once they hit 40, except for some minor exceptions. One exception is municipalities have the right to set a retirement date for police or firemen. One of the exceptions is that you have the right to offer someone um, the ability to retire if you sweeten their retirement benefits if they're over 40 to kind of move them on. But even if you do that, there's all sorts of qualifications for why you need to do that. You need to offer them an attorney, you need to give them a month to decide, a whole lot of things. Bottom line, once someone hits 40, you cannot treat them differently based upon their age. So you as an employer can't go up to someone and say, who's someone who's older, you seem to be slowing down, because that implies you're looking at them because they're older and making a decision based on their older. There's also the matter of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Someone touched on it in the course of one of their postings, and this is a really important law. What the Americans with Disabilities Act says is and this is really important, once an individual lets you know that they have a disability, you are required to make an accommodation for them to deal with that disability if at all possible. All right. So if you have an individual, for example, who is maybe they answer phones and they come to you and say, you know what, the phones just don't have a volume that's high enough for me to hear because I'm hearing impaired. Can you correct that? An accommodation might be for you to buy a different headset for them that increases the volume in their headset so they can hear those phone calls. The key point of the law is you cannot inquire about a disability, you can't ask, you can't point it out unless the employee brings it up first. If you do, you violated the law. So let me give you an example of someone who tries to do the right thing. From a human resource perspective, remember, you need to do what's legal and what's not legal. That applies with the Americans with Disabilities Act and shows you how important all these topics are and how they interrelate. There was a case of an individual who the supervisor had a feeling this individual had a drinking problem. Wasn't absolutely clear. But one day, this individual, by the way, was an appliance repair person and had a company truck. One day, the supervisor's driving home, goes past the bar, and sees one of his trucks parked outside the bar. He waits and waits and waits, and after a couple of hours, the employee comes out of the bar, obviously inebriated, and gets into the company truck. Supervisor immediately walks up to him before he's able to move the truck, tells him to get out, and terminates him on the spot for attempting to operate a company vehicle while inebriated. If he stopped right there, he would have been okay. That's a perfectly good reason to terminate someone. But at some point, this individual then goes for a termination hearing, and the supervisor tries to do something nice. And what that supervisor did is he looked at the employee and said, look, I know you have a drinking problem, and we really want to help you with the drinking problem. So if you agree to contact our EAP program as a referral and go in and get some kind of help for your drinking problem, we'll reinstate you. The employer said no. The employee said no, I don't want that help, and left. And as a result, was terminated. After the individual was terminated, he filed suit against the company. And this is what a judge ruled. The supervisor would have been okay saying, you tried to get in a truck in an unfit condition, you were terminated, period. But the supervisor went a step further. You see, when the supervisor said to the individual, you know what, we'll reinstate you because we think you have a drinking problem if you go to the EAP program and go and get some help, what the supervisor in essence said was, you have a disability, because alcoholism is a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act. You have a disability. We want you to get help with that disability, and if you don't get help with that disability, we're going to terminate you. And the truth is, an employer does not have a right to tell an employee they have a disability. They only have the right to deal with performance. And once the supervisor raised the issue of disabilities, what he did in essence was terminate that employee because he had a disability. And believe it or not, the judge rescinded the termination and the employee went back to work. Crazy story? Yeah. It happened every week on Law and Order. If you watch it, every week Law and Order had the same scenario. The police, someone would commit a crime, the police would arrest someone, they'd go before a judge, have some of the evidence thrown out, and then the district attorneys had to scramble to be able to convict the person, even when everybody knew they did the wrong thing, but they couldn't use the right evidence to terminate them. Human resources is not always about what's right or wrong. It's about what's legal and what's not legal. Please always remember that. I'm glad that you caught a lot of those concepts in your postings. I hope some of the things that I raised clarify points for you. If not, give me a call, shoot me an email message. That's why I'm here. And again, from time to time, I'm going to post videos like this just to help clarify some of the points. I've enjoyed working with you this semester. I think the semester is going really well. I enjoy reading your postings. In case you haven't noticed, I tend to read them first thing in the morning. I'm an early riser. Again, you have any questions, give me a call. If not, till I see you again, take care. Bye-bye.